All right, so we're gonna take a look at setting up your shocks. Okay, this is the front end of my buggy. Basically what we're gonna look at is the length of the shock. So whenever you're measuring your suspension, you wanna get the length from the bottom end to the top end. Typically on the front, you're gonna run a 10-inch stroke or a 12-inch stroke shock, okay? And basically, when you call me up to order these shocks, I mean, I got to know about the weight of the car, how much the front end is going to weigh, how much the back end is going to weigh, so I can get a ratio, and what kind of ride you want. Do you want it to be extreme, soft, medium? Most people are going to get set up for a medium shock. So here's the basic components of a coilover. Okay, this is your reservoir. Okay, so I always want to talk people into getting a reservoir. It's going to keep the shock lasting longer. It's going to keep the shock cooler. This is a piggyback reservoir. They also come in remote mount. So you basically have a hose coming out of here. You need to mount the reservoir like on this bar or on a different bar on the buggy or back a little further, like back over here. But you always want to get a reservoir if you can afford it. I mean, it's a little bit more expensive, and in the long run, it's really worth it. So basically, this thing is adjustable in so many ways. I mean, first off, you've got your bottom spring. Your bottom spring is basically going to be the heaviest spring. On this setup, it's a 250-pound spring. The rule of thumb is whatever your stroke is on your shock, that's how long of a spring you want to order. So you got a 10-inch stroke shock, you order a 10-inch long spring. Okay, so then you have your intermediate collar. So this collar here goes in between the upper spring and the lower spring. Okay, so the upper spring is always softer. And this is where the fine tuning is going to come in. If you want a softer ride, a harder ride, and if you really want to run it like a bat out of hell, we're going to make the top and the lower spring much stronger. So mine is set up for a pretty moderate ride. One of the key issues here is this collar. It's on the shock body. This collar here sets up when the lower spring is going to kick in. So as the shock runs through the compression, this collar comes up the shock body and will hit this collar here. So that's when the lower spring actually kicks in. So I see a lot of people have this collar right here and they'll have it all the way up at the very top. That's incorrect. You want to pull it down. You have to kind of get your own feel for it. If you want me to dial it in for you, I can do that. But it takes some practice. Anyway, so then you have your upper collar. This upper collar sets the ride height and for the buggy. So you want to have a little bit of droop. So if you look at my car, I'm going to pull some weight off of it, and you're actually going to see the shock move. I don't know if you can see that or not, but it's basically drooping about 20% droop. So about 2 inches of droop in the car. So I got a 10-inch stroke shock. It's going to be 16 inches of travel. You're looking at a 2-inch droop. Okay. So there's several things you can do on a shock. When you call and order it, I need to know the weight and your application of the vehicle, because what kind of ride you want, so I can set the spring rates. So everything works together. So you have a couple things. You have the lower spring, the upper spring, then you have your adjustments, right? Internally, you have your valving, you have your compression and your rebound. Okay, so if you ever see a buggy out there and it's bucking like a Bronco, typically that means he has not enough rebound or too much rebound, or the spring rates are off. It's just not dialed in. So I see it all the time, and I always think, you should have spent that last $500 getting your shocks tuned, because that's what's really going to make the buggy ride well, and that's why you have suspension, so it rides well. All right. So anyway, the other thing, so you can adjust the tension on the springs, you can adjust the spring rates, you can adjust the valving, both the compression and the rebound, and you can adjust how much nitrogen pressure you have. So all those things kind of work in concert. I mean, dialing in a shock, it's really part science and part art. So if you're thinking about getting some, doing a long travel deal, doing some long travel shocks, you really got to think of the end before you start. One of the things I hate seeing is people order a shock from me and they order springs from me and they have no idea what they want, and then the valving, they don't know what the valving is, and what ends up happening is they put it all on, they're not happy. Right? Because it's just not set up right. So just give me a call, talk to me, and tell me what your application is, and I will custom do it for you. I mean, I have a lot of experience doing this. It's really, I can get you super close. I mean, obviously you're going to be able to fine tune things by moving this up and down and moving this collar up and down. That'll fine tune it. And then you can adjust the pressure. So if you want me to tune it in, I mean, I can do it. It's about $1,200. I mean, you got to bring your buggy fully assembled to my shop We'll put it on the scales. We have scales on all four corners. We weigh the car, we tear apart the valving, we ask you what you want, and we'll dial it in for you. I mean, I've got all the equipment, everything ready to go. There's a race shop right by my shop. So I have I can take this car here 80 miles an hour over the whoops, no problem, 100% confidence. These shocks are just dialed in. So another thing you want to keep in mind is about every 2-3 seasons, you want to rebuild your shocks. You know, the oil gets hot, it gets worn out. It's just like your transmission. I mean, it's not leaking, but this stroke goes, the stroke up and down, that action heats everything up. So eventually the oil will lose its viscosity and start causing problems. I mean, I'll blow a seal on a shock probably like once every 2 seasons, and I just get them rebuilt at that time. So anyway, SansParts.com, if you're looking for some long travel shocks, you know, I can take care of you. I don't really recommend King brand anymore. I've had these, I bought them thinking they were the best. I found out later that they're not the best, so I'd rather go with a Fox. They're much better to work with. So that's the deal. All right, guys, take care. SansParts.com.